On the morning of a decisive White House press briefing, 27-year-old Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt assumed the podium under the glare of dozens of camera lenses and an assembly of national media figures. Known for her rapid ascent within the Trump administration, she arrived in a tailored neutral-tone suit, her demeanor composed and resolute. With national security declared the day's paramount concern, she opened with a succinct assurance that the administration would address every viewer, every reporter and every doubt with unvarnished fact. The briefing room itself felt charged, as if the silent congregation of microphones and recorders awaited a spark. Reporters from outlets across the political spectrum, CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, Newsmax and others, sat poised, notebooks open, microphones adjusted. In the front row, CNN veteran Kaitlan steadied herself, pen in hand. Her quiet confidence signalling readiness to press for answers. Collins struck first, invoking the controversy dubbed Signalgate. She asked why internal communications circulated without classification had nevertheless been disclosed outside official channels, and whether President Trump sought to suppress information vital to national security. Leavitt responded without hesitation, citing recent investigations by the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI. No evidence existed that any leak had compromised classified material, and the findings have been transmitted to Congress. She characterized the sensationalist label applied by some outlets as misleading, urging journalists to reference primary documents rather than assemble headlines driven by speculation. Not satisfied, Collins pressed on. If no threat existed, why withhold the full batch of communications? Leavitt answered that disclosure of every routine memorandum would only yield confusion and potentially aid adversaries by proliferating non-issue fragments. She reminded the room of a similar incident in which premature information disclosure had forced costly adjustments to US military operations abroad. This administration protects American security, she concluded, not tabloid narratives. The exchange concluded with Leavitt's challenge. She had answered the question thrice. Was there another reporter with a distinct inquiry? The room fell into a brief hush before a Newsmax correspondent ventured a hand. Collins, undeterred, then shifted to immigration enforcement, citing a 2019 ruling by the Supreme Court affirming the legality of a deportation. She asked about diplomatic tensions arising from the removal of an El Salvadoran individual allegedly tied to MS-13. Leavitt, unflinching, reviewed the case. 2 immigration courts had adjudicated the man's status. The individual had been removed in accordance with established protocol. And the lone staff member responsible for the procedural breach had been suspended. She underscored MS-13's record, more than 1,200 murders on US soil since 2010. And asserted that true negligence would have been inaction, not enforcement. By contrast, the administration had reduced deportation processing times by 30% and offered logistical support to El Salvador should they request repatriation assistance. Collins redirected the focus to alleged paperwork errors and diplomatic friction, querying how the administration would prevent future mistakes and preserve innocence. Leavitt seized upon the statistic that MS-13 had slain 87 children in America since 2015. Reframing the debate, the priority must be safeguarding citizens. Procedural refinement had been continuous, she said, but policy must not favor criminals over communities. Once more, she reminded Collins that the underlying question had already been addressed and invited other reporters to pursue topics affecting public safety. The briefing advanced to foreign affairs when Collins turned to US-Russia relations. She questioned the administration's closeness to President Vladimir Putin in light of election interference allegations. Leavitt described the strategy as peace through strength, citing the record $750 billion defense budget and aggressive sanctions that had cut Russia's oil exports by 15% in the preceding year. Intelligence agencies had thwarted 17 Russian cyber attack plots, she added, illustrating that diplomatic engagement complemented, not compromised, American security interests. Yet transparency, she argued, must be balanced against operational trust. Routine leaks in 2024 had delayed a critical NATO treaty, costing billions and jeopardized allied cooperation. A Breitbart reporter then inquired about new defense ties with Poland and Taiwan amid rising geopolitical tensions. to which Levitt announced a comprehensive redesign of allied partnerships, leveraging economic influence and military presence. An advanced plan was already in motion, she said, to ensure no vacuum formed in strategic regions. When asked by a Hill reporter about proposed cuts to foreign aid, Levitt repudiated the premise of unilateral reductions. Instead, she outlined a redirection model. Each disbursement now carried enforceable accountability measures. If any partner cannot uphold our shared values, she warned, the funding does not vanish. It returns to programs that directly benefit American interests. Collins's final substantive question addressed the domestic economic impact of President Trump's tariff policies. She cited an 8% rise in consumer prices, milk, electronics, everyday staples, and asked how the administration intended to mitigate hardships on American families. Levitt responded by portraying tariffs as a deliberate investment in national manufacturing. Since imposition, domestic factories had added 1.2 million jobs. Steel exports were up 25%, and personal income tax cuts had increased household disposable income by an average $3,200. She acknowledged that prices had shifted, but presented Commerce Department data showing that foreign producers had lowered their US export prices by $14 billion last year to maintain market share. Concurrently, the Small Business Administration had extended $50 billion in low-interest loans, aiding 80% of small enterprises. Still, Collins pressed if consumers were shouldering the burden, would tariffs be eased? Levitt countered with a broader historical perspective. Between 2000 and 2015, America had lost 2 million manufacturing positions to foreign competition. Over the last year alone, 300,000 factory jobs had returned. Tariffs, she maintained, served as a shield rather than a sword, a necessary barrier against unfair trade practices that had hollowed out communities. Once more, she declared that Collins's question had been addressed. At that moment, applause erupted among conservative-leaning reporters. Some from the Liberal side exchanged uneasy glances. Collins, momentarily silent, made rapid notes, her expression a mix of defiance and frustration. Levitt signalled urged media outlets to focus on American achievements rather than divisive headlines, and reiterated the administration's commitment to working relentlessly for workers, families, and the future of this nation. With that, she stepped down from the podium to sustained applause from Fox News, Newsmax, and other outlets, while some mainstream and liberal reporters remained seated, pens still poised, but voices hushed. In the immediate aftermath, social media platforms erupted. A post on X proclaimed, "Caroline Leavitt just dismantled Kaitlan Collins, 27 and commanding the room, earning thousands of shares." Fox News commentators praised her performance as a lesson in factual rigor. Newsmax likened her to legendary spokespeople. CNN analysts deconstructed Collins's strategy, noting the persistence but questioning effectiveness of repeated lines of inquiry. Even MSNBC acknowledged Leavitt's deft control of the room, conceding that her assertiveness had left Collins on the defensive. Back at CNN headquarters, Kaitlan Collins convened with producers and advisors, reviewing transcripts and social media reactions. Though supporters lamented her unfavourable reception, veteran colleagues stressed the value of resilience. Today's setback would inform tomorrow's approach. Meanwhile, Levitt departed for a congratulatory call from the president, her ascent from spokesperson to prominent conservative voice now unmistakable. In the broader press corps, journalists filed analyses under headlines ranging from "Young Spokesperson Redefines Political Briefings" to "The New Face of Conservative Communication." Congressional figures chimed in. One Republican congresswoman lauded Levitt's unwavering defense of administration policy, while Senate Democratic leader Charles E. Schumer cautioned that adversarial press confrontations risked deepening political divides. As the White House briefing room lights dimmed and cleaning staff reset the stage, the echoes of that intense exchange lingered. For some, it marked the emergence of Caroline Leavitt as a central figure in American political discourse. For others, it underscored the growing chasm between the Trump administration and the mainstream media. Yet all agreed on one point. The press briefing had become a defining moment, illustrating how meticulous preparation, data-driven argumentation, and commanding presence can reshape public debate and set a new standard for those who seek to hold power to account.